Good. Got that done.
Yeah.
Hi, Rodrigo. Thank you so
Hi,
much for
Christina.
doing this. Thank you really for
Well, it's
coming
my
in
pleasure.
to play. You know, this feels like a little experiment just to play and have a conversation about soul in the driver's seat. This is the first installment, which is the chapter one, the introduction. And I'm just very curious. We have not spoken about the content at all. So I'm just going to give it over to you straight away and say, tell me your first impressions, anything you want to say about it.
I received the soul in the driver's seat, not feeling that I'm really the audience of this writing, although my impression was clearly that there is an audience for this transmission. First, statements such as, "It is I, the one known as Jesus." I receive it with a very simple mind. Yes, I'm not really concerned about ascertaining whether this is really from Jesus or not from Jesus. This is really the true Jesus. This is a just invention of Rick's mind. For me, these questions don't even occur. They don't matter for me. What matters is simply the quality, the vibration, the tone, the feeling in what is being transmitted by this text. So I will go beyond this. So then it is saying that it is a Course in Miracles for the a new age or for a brand new audience. I feel very good about this. It really feels something new, something refreshing. Who this brand new audience is, again, we don't know for sure. I don't feel I am this audience, but I feel, yes, there is probably kind of a youthful audience that will welcome the lightheartedness, the simplicity, really the youthfulness that transpires from the text, from this transmission. It follows the direction or the direction, the course set in A Course in Miracles. So I feel that saying it is a new sort of a version of A Course in Miracles makes sense. It really going in that direction of A Course in Miracles. What I like most about this text is that right from the start, it is going to the core, to the essence, to the heart of all issues that we face, which is the matter of identity. So I felt really good while reading that right from the beginning, although this voice is clearly introducing a text that is meant to be light, but it's not superficial. It is light, it's light-hearted, it's youthful, but not superficial. It is profound in its simplicity because it goes straight to the core, the essence. There's no spiritual path that will truly bring us to the end of suffering, bring us to the recognition that all our experiences are taking place in our inner world, and that the outer world, the external world, is merely reflecting the realities and experiences that we are having within ourselves. It points to the fact that we have assumed for a long, long time a mistaken identity, and that we need to look at the matter of identity with a new eyes, with new eyes. Yes, we have to stop and question our assumption that we are a body mind,
Right.
that our body, our personality, our likes and dislikes, and so on define who we are. They don't. So I like the text, and I feel it is deep, exactly because it points out right from the start the core issue we are all facing in humanity today. The issue or the question of identity, who we really are. And it uses the idea of a soul, yeah,
Yeah.
to say that it is this soul that is the real deal. It is the soul that is the real me, the sense of I amness. It's being defined here in this text as the soul, although it hints at something bigger than the soul.
Right.
That the soul is that a part of a spirit
Right.
which is closer to the human level experience.
Mhm.
But I also like it that it already points out that this soul has layers or levels. And at the highest level, we are talking about oneness. We are talking about Christ consciousness. We are talking about the Buddha's mind, the enlightened mind. And so yeah, so this is the what stood out for me. And by this, I felt good about this transmission. I feel it will reach really a new audience, or there are those who are waiting for this, and that will be greatly benefited by receiving this transmission.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. That's really good because I know you've had many years of experience, with the teaching A Course in Miracles and living A Course of Love and journeying to the unknown and arrival. And it feels like this, as Jesus said, he's creating by recreating for a brand new audience. And this is like the condensation. Someone actually said to me, this is like the cliff notes, cliff notes for studying very heavy books and textbooks, but it's the cliff notes for all of that. So yeah, I mean, even just the identity thing you mentioned, it's huge. And the simple sentence in verse 6 is, this soul is your true self. I mean, that's really that simple. That's what they're talking about. And I like the word refreshing because it doesn't matter how long people have and how many books we've studied. It's always good to have something this simple to remind us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the word you use, superficial, because it isn't superficial at all. It's funny, but very easy for people to relate to, I think. Yeah. So let me just ask, was there anything in the first chapter that made you stop and think, oh, this could be misunderstood, or this one is a little bit difficult? Was there anything in there? Because I've got a couple of things like that made me stop and think about it, but I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, different readers will experience the text obviously in different ways. There are some sentences that if you take your background understanding of truth, you may find sentences that are not fully in alignment with what we already know, but that's the nature of the mind. The mind reads books and believes that after figuring things out, that you have truth figured out.
Mm.
And once you come to that stage in which you already read a lot of books, you've been in the spiritual path for a long time, there is this pitfall of our mind shaping boundaries and defining what truth should look like and how truth should be presented, what kind of wording. So I bumped into a sentence that my mind really thought, oh, wait one moment. But I'm already, I know
Mm.
characteristic of the mind, and therefore I don't stop much there. I read, comes that what? But then I said, no, let's not dwell in this here. As long as the overall essence of a transmission is truthful, as long as the energy consciousness or the feeling of the transmission points me back to my true self, rekindles the love in my heart, clears up the clutter in my mind, helps me to breathe again that fresh air of soulfulness in my life. I like it.
Good,
But
good.
as you asked, just to mention one detail, like
Yeah.
I will say that let me see here. This is in paragraph 7.
7.
In
Okay.
paragraph 7, it's fun. It talks, this is the great calm. But who is it? Who is it who created this great
Great.
calm?
On.
I like this language, this word, the great calm. Maybe it is really a great calm, yeah.
Well,
But
let
in
me
the
just
answer,
I'm going to just
sorry.
read that paragraph, okay? So it
Okay.
says,
Yeah.
it wants you to believe. So the ego, we're talking about the ego here, tricks you into thinking you are something you are not. It wants you to believe that you are not a soul, an aspect of the creator of the universe, but instead are a complicated person with likes, dislikes, a history, and a projected future. This is the great con. But who is
Yeah.
it who created this great con? It was all souls as totality who decided to take on this great adventure in pretending to be something we are not.
Yeah. It was this last line, this last sentence, this answer, that saying that it was all souls as totality who decided, to go for this great combat.
Mm, mm,
I put it this way, but again, I'm not making any big fuss out of it. I will just go and read ahead. But my understanding is that it was a phenomenon propagated by the thinking mind, not the soul. I would say that the thinking mind, the mind, when it got this function of becoming actively a thinker and not just an intuitive vessel for receiving messages coming from source, when the mind assumed its role of a, a thinker and started using sensory perceptions as the data for this thinking, it led this thinking mind to believe itself to be an I, a
mm.
self, no, small s, self. So my understanding is that it was this thinking mind that generated the great calm, not exactly the soul, but again, it is a small thing for me. I'm saying with all these words I'm explaining, but I also take it lightly. But as you asked, perhaps
Mhm,
this kind of saying that the soul itself would create a cone against itself, it might
mhm.
sound not so consistent,
But it's
or not.
the ego, you're right, the ego, the body's operating system that does the tricking. That's the thing. I mean, but there's a couple of things there. Uh, for someone who's never looked at any of these spiritual books, it's going to speak to them. I mean, in terms of people who, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of people out there who've never been drawn to any kind of religion, maybe rebelled against religion they had when they were growing up, never drawn to pick up any spiritual books. I mean, we all know people like, who family and friends who we would have loved to share these books that we were reading, but they just was of no interest to them. Um, my hope is that they'll read something like this and kind of resonate with language like that, the great Khan, because
Yeah,
even when we're living our lives. I mean, imagine for a second not feeling there's anything beyond I was born, I grew up, I went to school, college, work, 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 and then I have my family, and then I retire, and then I die. Nothing beyond that. There are many people I know who feel that genuinely, that there is nothing beyond that. I feel there are many who are beginning to question that. They have a sense that there's something more, but they don't have any language for it. They just know it can't be like this. And this, I think it calls it somewhere the Great Awakening. I think that it's going to appeal to them because something like the Great Khan is like, in a way, it helps you relax because it's like, well, everybody fell for it, we all
Yeah.
fell for it in some way or
Yeah.
another, and ultimately, as we read this chapter, it's not about any part of ourselves being bad. It was just mistaken, and the goal is bringing soul and ego together, and the ego is part of the soul. I mean, it's there. It's just not driving the vehicle. That's the difference. It's there, but it's the soul is driving, and ego is there in terms of arms and legs and the doing. It comes through, it's emerging, it's all merging. Like somewhere in here, it talks about it's the merging of the timeless and the time bound. It's the
Yeah, that
merging
was
of
beautiful.
ego and soul,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, one of the wonderful things about this book is that my husband, who is very intuitive, and he's a very kind, generous, loving man, but he has his way of thinking about the world and never was interested in reading any of these books and hasn't followed any particular religion. I mean, he grew up as a Christian Baptist in England, has read this and likes it. It speaks to him. The language speaks to him. And being an engineer, the language, has to be meaningful in that way, not using big words and, flowery language. It speaks very directly. So, but the question for me also is how to share it beyond the community we're in, I know the answers will come because everything unfolds in perfect timing. Everything that's happened, you talked about the thinking mind. It kind of feels like that was a detour we all had to take. The thinking, the Cartesian thinking, to understand something, you separate it into smaller pieces and you understand each piece. But here we are. So how do we reach the people with this kind of conversation? I hope a little bit, but yeah, that I just put it out there, as something to think about. There was one part I wanted to ask you about because a couple of people have had difficulty with that. I'm going to find it here. Oh, right, this part where it talks about overcoming the power of the ego is the purpose. This is verse 17, for any world of form. And then if I skip a little bit, it says, it is true that you are not alone on the earth. This is true in more ways than one. Whatever the world's population is, double that, and that gives an idea of how many character puppets there are and how many souls there are operating each and every one. The character puppets were all designed to believe they're real, and they each do. So to humor them, we will double the population. How would you explain that to someone who says, what do you mean doubling the population?
It's just a figure of speech. In Asia, especially it came from Taoism, there is this expression, the 10,000. So when you want to talk about a large number of something, the 10,000 things, the 10,000 egos.
Yeah.
It is just so let's double that. It means that there is a lot of that. So if we think that we are a lot of souls or a lot of people on Earth, think again. There is double of that,
Double that.
a lot more of that in more than one way. It means
Yeah.
one way is that right here on Earth itself, there are non-physical beings that share this space of consciousness with us. It's one way of understanding. So there are more people, but not non-physical beings, human-like us. No? Another way is that he's hinting at the possibility that there are humanities, other humankind in other planets, other
Mm.
parts of the universe, which is very much likely.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of souls out there, both non-physical beings right here on Earth, as well as physical beings with human bodies, however they look like, in other parts of the universe, in other planets.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I'll say how I interpret it in a minute, but I think you're raising a really important point for me, which is that everyone who reads this takes it in their own way and interprets it in their own way. So when I've been asked these questions, it's really up to the person to kind of hang out with it. And it's okay not to know what it means, you know, just
Yeah,
let it hang out. And if you need to know, you'll know, you know. But then when I'm pressed and they say, well, tell me what how you would interpret it. I went back and I read the sentence quite carefully. And when it says double the world's population, whatever the world's human population is, double that. And that gives an idea of how many character puppets there are. I noted the phrase gives an idea. As you said, it's a figure of speech. It's not that Jesus is saying there actually is double the population walking around on the planet. It gives you an idea. So when you know the population of the planet and you double that, you get, oh my God, that's pretty big, you know? But the other way that the more meaningful to me that dropped in was, you know, we like to think that all the conflict in the world is like out there, and if they would only settle down and sort themselves out, you know, it'd be a world of peace and harmony and everything. But the truth is, it's all in here, right? So in that sense, there isn't just, well, as we mature, hopefully we merge more and more ego and soul. But let's just say, yeah, I'm having a bad day or whatever. And there's really two of me here in conflict, right? I mean, there's me, the ego who's scared, you know, and is trying to, what was it? Somewhere here it says, I'm trying to go back to this so I don't just make up language. Oh yeah, it says here in verse 15, the soul sees purpose in everything, whereas the ego sees things as a means to an end or a final product. And usually because I'm afraid of something, so I want to achieve something. Whereas the soul just sees what's happening as a purpose in itself. And are we able at this point to choose love over fear? So that is the conflict, and that's the two. That's how I double it, you know? It's an idea of it. It's not the actual population.
yeah,
And it's so interesting that somewhere in here it says the talk of the brain as a lump of clay. I love the language. I
yeah.
mean, it's like it's very vivid, you know. You can't mistake that when it says your brain is a lump of clay.
Yeah.
It's not making it wrong. The ego uses a mound of clay, parentheses, the brain, to do its bidding. Everything revolves around me, myself, and I, seeking power first. But again, it is because I'm afraid. When I'm afraid, I do things, you know, to protect myself. So that's also a thing I try and remember, that to welcome that scared little ego when it comes, sort of an embracing that says, there you are again. There's that fear. It's okay. The soul is spacious enough to enfold you. And here you don't have to strive so hard anymore. You don't have to be so alert for danger and to protect me. We are here together, and you can rest and allow and relax in the back seat. Here's a soft blanket, here's a bar of chocolate, just hang out and enjoy the ride. That's ultimately where it feels good to go there. How's that feel to you?
Yeah, I like your the languaging that you are using. Yeah, again, talking about the ego is complicated. The ego is complicated because the definitions or the understanding of what the ego actually is, again, it varies from text to text. So the way you are putting, I feel it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it ego anymore because at least in the languaging of A Course of Love, we are led to understand gradually that the ego is gone, that there are residual patterns. It is the language patterns from the past that have an inertia, they have a momentum that will keep for some time, although the the root of the ego itself is gone. The ego was uprooted, and therefore there is no longer really an ego, but in the psychological sense of it. But as you are putting it, the ego is not just that psychological misidentity, that false identity, but the body itself, the bodily functions, the attributes of the human personality. So if you call it the ego, yes, all that you said makes total sense.
Right.
And it's like this. Yeah, the human self, the personal self,
Myself, right.
needs to be embraced with love, really, and acceptance. Given that warm blanket, as you said, the
Yeah.
chocolate, so that really exactly this, enjoy the ride,
Okay. Right. No
knowing that
longer afraid.
it's a higher intelligence, a
Right.
superior order of consciousness that can drive our life, that can guide us, that can make wise choices, choices that are beneficial for us and not detrimental as the ego choices
Right.
are. Yeah. Mhm.
But you're quite right that the ego, the language can be a little different from text to text. I mean, I know there are texts that would talk about you've got to get rid of the ego. It's like push it away. But we're not we can't leave anything behind. It's all energy. Where everything is an aspect of the one. So um, the merging, it's more of a melding together, and that fear no longer arises. But when it does, also, it can feel very real. But perhaps it is, as you're saying, a little like an echo of a pattern, the remnants of something. But the world teaches us, to be afraid and to fight and control and protect. And, so it is kind of tricky talking. We have to imagine, and I'm hoping very soon there'll be people who'll come forward. And this is a call to anybody who watches this, come forward if you'd like to talk. There are no requirements. You just come and we have a conversation, um, because every point of view is valuable.
Oh,
Every
yes.
experience. And this is because, as Jesus said, this is a brand new book for a brand new audience. And in some sense, you and I, in a way, have kind of forgotten what it's like to live in the world without a sense that there's something larger, you know, without what movement has happened within us that allows us to feel safer and not be so fearful. But I'm very, very aware how much fear and suffering and pain there is out there. And I want anyone who's prepared to come and talk to talk about that, because that's all as real can be, you know. You were talking about the body. Um, you know, a lot of interpretations of some of these texts is that the body is an illusion, and, you know, again, is a sort of a separation, you know, it's not real. But in fact, the body vehicle is what it is, it's neutral, and is there for its the purpose we use it for. And if we use it for love, it becomes love, you know, it becomes, I think A Course of Love calls it the elevated self of form. It literally transforms and transmutes into and I kind of love that the title says A Course in Miracles with a new age, because although it could put some people off because there's new agey, you know, stuff kind of thing, the language that's been used around the body and so on is this, you know, the body is transmogrifying into a crystalline based form rather than carbon based, you know. But the body
Yeah.
is crucial in terms of being the messenger of sensations and feelings, you know, very much so. So all of it again is noticing where there's any separation and fear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
hoping.
It was good that you brought this up, because this issue of whether the body and the world is an illusion or not is paramount. If we get a superficial understanding of these texts, we may end up adding more confusion to an already confused mind, rather than clearing up, bringing lucidity.
Mhm.
So it's vital that we understand that these spiritual teachings, at least what I felt while receiving them, including A Course in Miracles, A Course of Love, Way of Mastery,
Mhm.
and the journey, departure, arrival, and so on and so forth, I never felt that the body was being decried as illusory, in the sense of it's not important, it does not matter, don't take care of it. No, it's not who you are. Yeah, it's not who we are. But these texts are saying what you said already. You know, the body is a vehicle of communication. It's a communication vehicle.
Exactly.
As such, it depends on who is the communicator, who is taking the body to communicate. If it is an illusory self, yes, then whatever comes through the body is illusory. Well, if the communicator, the consciousness that is communicating or expressing through the body is true, is real, then the body is real at that moment, in that particular expression. It is communicating something true. As we know that love is all there is in ultimate reality, all that the body is expressing, that is an emanation from the energy of love, makes it real and true. And whatever is fearful or comes from this energy source of fear will render the body illusory. Just as the world is again neutral. It's neither real nor illusory. It is just neutral, and it is the way we look at the world, or rather, who is looking at the world, that makes the world illusory or real. It
Yeah.
is the self that is perceiving or knowing the world that makes this perception illusory or this knowledge real. So I feel that this text here, the soul in the driver's seat, is going in this direction of not denying the value of the human experience, but simply merging it with that eternal spark of
Right.
truth, that
Right.
soul and the collective soul, the Christ consciousness that we are in truth.
Mhm. Mhm. because it is experience. What really is important is an individual's experience. And perceptions are different, you know. I mean, just in an ordinary sense, you know, if someone, you know, steps on a sharp stone or something, one person will, you know, yelp in pain, and you know, it'll really be something big, and another person is fine and keeps walking, you know. It's all to do with the individual, so nothing can be denied. I mean, denying anything is a separation. So perception, and it's always about love too. I mean, if someone's hurting, you embrace them, you know. When I'm hurting, you know, I certainly have come a long way in terms of pushing my body, um, and not pushing my body, and listening and feeling and allowing, you know, what's present to be fully experienced. But I don't know, there is a lot in this chapter. I feel like this is, you know, like I think A Course of Love is a lot like this, and A Course in Miracles too. It's like a little hologram, you know. I read this chapter, which is the introduction, and I'm thinking, okay, everything is already said. What more is there? Do you know, when you early on you said it's got the essence of everything, and it really is here in that way. It even addresses the whole issue of free will. You know, the part where I think it's verse 17 that it says, there are many, many places on the earth, and there are many, many situations on the earth where there just wasn't enough God energy to positively affect an otherwise negative situation or climate. Until a character puppet allows its own soul to ask for and receive outside assistance, none is offered. In a way, that's very encouraging and hopeful, which it means I can choose to allow my soul to ask, you know. On the other hand, it's a little bit scary to think that my small self, the scared self, you know, can prevent my soul from accomplishing what it's here for, which is, or I like to think that I can, I guess. Eventually, it all comes around, but I can spend a long time going in circles, right? And that's the issue of free will.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, the asking for help thing, you know.
It was what happened with Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford when they stated that there must be a better way. Because it comes a moment in our human experience in which this something beyond the thinking mind, beyond the ego self,
Mm-hmm.
will exclaim, like that still small voice within us will finally be heard. We will listen, thought, a new thought
Mm-hmm.
saying to us, there is another way,
Mm-hmm.
there is a better way. And that's the beginning of the opening of the doors that will lead us out of this great con, out of this pattern of believing that the thinking mind and the body is who I am. I will then discover that there is another voice, or there is another self, there is a consciousness, an aware presence behind the thoughts and feelings, underlying my desires and fears, beneath my likes and dislikes. There is a common ground, the ground of being, an aware presence, as I said, that is conscious of itself, that has wisdom in itself, innate wisdom, that can see things in a different way, that can see the world different, that can see the purpose of our life differently. And when I get to experience this other self, that's our soul, then everything changes.
Mhm.
That's the beginning of a true spiritual path. That's when I discovered that besides or beyond the noisy thoughts of the thinking mind, beyond all the feelings, desires, and anxieties, fears, and the body, with its sensations and perceptions, there is a self in me, an I consciousness, and I am consciousness.
So I'm curious, how do you think someone who doesn't have that awareness, I mean, maybe a slight sense that there's got to be something more, but really doesn't, how do you think this chapter will land in them if they were to read it? You know, not really thinking there really is anything more, or, it just is the way it is. And, it's a harsh world.
The original thought or our original love is always there, always. It's
Mhm.
forever present.
Which-
Books such as The Soul in the Driver's Seat may be the spark, the trigger
Mm.
to something that is already there, bursting to be.
Mhm.
The voice of love, the voice for God, the connection to Source, our soul, with its still small voice. It's there
Okay.
always. But then something happens at some point in the life of every human being that you
Yeah.
trigger this first spark. The moment in which you sense, you experience beyond concepts that there is something else in me.
Mm.
There is something beyond the self I believe myself to be. There is another voice. There is a consciousness here that speaks with a different language.
Mm.
It speaks of love and truth and power and freedom and abundance and joy. And
Well,
when I discovered this, I thought, wow, I like that. So I want to listen more to it. And
I
books
hope
such
you're
as
right. I hope
this
this
one, yeah.
I hope this can bring people to that, because I'm not sure, I think I'm going to believe it when I see it, it's, I mean, I know, and right? But one of the things I'm aware of is that uh, it takes courage to speak of these things in ordinary language to ordinary people that you encounter in a store or on the street, or whatever. And I'm hoping people will, speak, but without using big words. Like, you've used the word consciousness a few times, so I'd say no consciousness.
I'm talking to Christina Strutt now.
I know.
If I'm on the supermarket, in the grocery store, yes, the language
Tell
will
me how.
change.
Okay, I'm somebody in the supermarket, and you just have a sense that, I am sort of ready to hear something. Tell me, speak to me. Tell me how you talk to me.
I would just say, well, sometimes life feels tiring, but I kind of I found or I discovered that there is another way of looking at things.
And then they say, "What are you talking about? What other way?"
We don't need to define it. We just need to experience it.
But
So
I'm
forget the
experiencing the
definitions.
hardship. I'm experiencing exactly what I'm experiencing, and it's tough. It's a grind. It's a grind, and then I go to bed, and then I get old, and then I die.
Yeah, so don't make a problem out of it. Embrace it. So embrace this
I don't
thought,
want
these very thoughts. Now, if you don't want again, no problem. You don't
no,
need
I
to.
don't
But
want
it's a kind of you don't need to, you don't have to, but at some moment you might like
I
to.
want
You
to.
might
Yeah.
like to experience you differently. You might like to see in a different way, knowing that There must be a better way,
Right, right.
another way, a new way of looking at things,
Yeah.
a new way that will transform my human experience, elevate my human experience, make it finally make sense, make my human experience finally be worth it.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
I kind of tricked you by saying, what would you say to them? Because I think people like you, I mean, you emanate that energy. You by your very presence, people are going to be wondering there is something more. And we're not even necessarily connecting it, but it's your presence alone that will enable the mind to kind of get a little unseated. And then, whatever you say doesn't really matter so much as the love that you
Yes.
exhibited, and I think it was a trick question. I was kind of just like giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
But well, it's verse 8, and I noticed myself kind of stop and look at that again, because verse 8 says, strengthening ourselves through adversity of all types is the only way to grow more of it. And I think the it's referring to is, the next sentence, this it that I refer to is source energy. This is God. God is here to grow more of itself. And I would love to replace the word God there with love. I mean, it's a synonym. Love is
Yeah.
here to grow more of itself. So,
Yes. Yeah.
when you talk about, walking around in that presence of love, that is palpable to people. It is
Yes.
palpable. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is.
Yes. We need to surely to transcend this old notion of God as a person,
Right.
as a being in the sense of someone, an entity. And God is just pure consciousness. It's just pure presence. Or, as you said, love.
And for a little while now, I've been actually having very definitive experiences of people's readiness. Just because I carry around in my pocketbook a bunch of rose quartz hearts. And as I'm moved, and every time I go into a store, or I'm on the street, or wherever I am, it's not, I don't know who or when I'm going to give one to, but I think I've only had one adverse response 99% of the time. I mean, everyone says I really needed that. I needed the reminder, because I simply say this, it carries the energy of unconditional love, which is what we really are. And I say, and I mean it, I like to give them a way to remind myself and the person I'm giving it to that we really are the energy of love. And people often say, yeah, I know that. I know that. But no one speaks of it that way. So, I think a book like this, which just exudes love. I mean, the whole of this chapter, I feel it's so approachable, it's so
Yes.
simple and so approachable. And the humor, I just, it's my hope that it will reach, and of course it will. I mean, I do have faith in that it will reach the people it's meant to reach, without any
Yes.
need for marketing. Each one of us is the message, and we will know, where it goes and who it goes to. There was one part that I thought was really, the picture it conjured up was so funny. Where it's talking about some thoughts and concepts require buy-in. One person may buy into a concept due to fear of eternal damnation in a lake of fire being supervised by demons armed with pitchforks, while others have no such inhibitions.
Yeah.
That picture, Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Coming from the Middle Ages. Yeah.
And actually that made me think about how so many of the systems that we've relied on in the world, or even in the USA or in Brazil, wherever we are breaking down. I mean, in the US, this whole legal system I mean, it's showing the holes in it. There is really, it has no, what's the word for it? It has nothing to stand on. It's like a built on sand, you know? It really, and I think back to when I really trusted that the system would take care of you. I mean, it doesn't, it can't. That's the thing. When I say something like that, I'm not blaming and judging anything. I'm saying, how could we have believed that it does? It can't, you know? Only
Yeah,
love does. Only love does. And
that was beautiful, Christina. Very well said. There is a beautiful paragraph I would like to read. For
please.
me, it's the most important thing here is this paragraph 14.
Mhm.
Uh, it is the last sentence, but anyway, let me read it
So,
from the beginning. The human experience is an interactive relationship with billions of seemingly separate parts. Seemingly, no idea. This is the human illusion because what seems to be isn't what is really transpiring at all. And now, the oneness within the multitude is growing and becoming more aware of itself. This is what I have been experiencing in these last years. I have been observing more of it in all walks of life, in different, like in the arts, in the movies, in music, and in books, of course, and in the conversations with people, even in the simple writings on a coffee shop, you know, they hand some cute things there and write, "We are all one." So I don't know. And then maybe the depth of understanding of it will vary. Nonetheless, it's remarkable that people can be talking so much and so often now of our oneness.
yes,
Mm,
yes, that's perfect. I love that. Yeah, you're right. And it's time to come out of hiding, you know, and
yeah,
just be the message for a start. That's really the main thing, being the energy of love wherever you go, but also speaking of it, the power of the spoken, you know, the movement of sound as we speak it, and take actions that are loving and kind. I mean, that's really
yeah,
essence of it. But it is an exciting time. It really is. One of the things I realized when I was sitting down to write the newsletter that announced Soul in the Driver's Seat, A Course in Miracles for the New Age, it just came to me, you know, that 2 years ago, this Disney Pixar movie was released, Soul. The movie had simply was called Soul, an animated movie
yeah,
depicting, you know, the before life, after life, you know, and the struggle, you know, to come down to earth and have this great adventure. I mean, it was hilarious and funny and quirky and all the rest of it, but there were many aspects of it that I thought were very, very interesting. And also the fact, just if nothing else, the fact that that word soul, S-O-U-L, kind of entered the collective consciousness in a very fun and harmless way, not in a heavy, you know, way, but in a light way that, you know, parents and families going with children to see this movie. It's streaming now on Disney Plus. It's in the collective consciousness there. I use that word.
yeah. It's reaching mainstream.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's big.
And almost like paving the way for a book like this to come and call itself Soul in
Yeah,
the Driver's Seat, you know, and people will have an idea, you know, whereas all those decades ago, the word soul was considered a little, you know, difficult and controversial. And I think it isn't any longer. So everything comes in perfect for what it's time, and then something new comes, and then this is here now for this time. And
yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
it is.
So, was there anything else you'd like to say, Rodrigo? There was one more.
No, not really. I'm good, and I'm looking forward to receiving the second transmission, the chapter two.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
once a
And
month.
just to say it loud, I know you know that I already said it in my heart, but just to say it loud that I'm very appreciative of your work, along with Rick Greathouse, for taking your time, you know, your energy, your love, your expertise in different fields. Rick taking his time to download, receiving these messages. This is a very necessary transmission. So it's my big blessing and wave of love to you too, and to all others. I know Colin, your husband, has been involved also in this. So yeah, I appreciate each one of you.
And Joe, she's helping me like get
So
these videos up on YouTube and the newsletter she does, gets it out there.
yes,
But very much Rick's devotion, it's 3.5 years now he's been receiving. And he continues to while he holds his full-time job, as a teacher.
yeah,
So it's amazing what he's been doing. Yeah, I'm very appreciative of all of that, as you are, Rodrigo. But I just wanted to end here by the final, well, not the final verses. This is the end of the introduction. But the semi-final verse 18 says,
yeah,
this is the second coming of Christ. The second coming of Christ is the awakening within each and every one of us, to being the Christ.
yeah.
Mary,
Christ is synonymous with oneness,
yeah, yeah,
is the shared identity.
right.
So that's Christ. So we can put as that as the Buddha mind, the awakened mind, we put as the Christ. So I can just inviting the reader of this text not to be stuck in terminology. For those who resonate with this term of Christ, yes, embrace it. For others, God, Christ, soul, like not let the thinking mind to bog you down at these terms. They are energies, simply in a
Yeah,
simple way.
and the potential now is huge, and I think I'm very grateful for all the work every person has done, kind of tilling the ground, because
Yeah.
for all of our brothers and sisters, we are one. So none of us can say, well, I'm ascended. I'm a very
Mhm.
spiritual person. It's a we, we alone
Yeah.
together. That's kind of how I see it. You see everyone essential, unique, and yet together. We can't do this alone. It's just not possible. Doesn't make any sense. So thank you.
Thank you too,
Thank you
Christina.
so
A
much.
great pleasure being with you.
And let's hope and put this out. Let's hope we'll be doing dialogues with people who haven't even ever looked at any of those books that we
Yeah.
talked about. That would be marvelous. That would be just so exciting to have those conversations, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
So till then, thank you. I love you.
Okay.
Mwah.
Thank
Bless.
you.
God bless.
Love you too.
Bye now.
Bye.